Just had a few opening comments. Well, first of all, I'm excited for our student athletes, our coaches and staff, as I know how anxious they've been to start their season, especially since our postponement announcement on August 11th. The decision was very directly driven by our medical subcommittee and our medical experts across the Big Ten 14 institutions, as well as the leadership of our COPC. We had a return to a competition task force that maybe I would spend a minute or so on. Medical subcommittee that was led by Sandy Barber, the athletics director at Penn State. Scheduling subcommittee led by athletic director Barry Alvarez of Wisconsin. And I was asked to chair the media subcommittee. And those three groups worked in tandem and in collaboration, side by side. We were always led by the medical subcommittee, but for Coach Alvarez and I, we stayed awfully close and provided a number of models that we can talk about if you want, in order to provide the medical subcommittee as well as the COPC with as much information, as many options as possible. I want to reiterate, though, that this is a first step, and we have a lot of work to do still between now and kickoff, as Paul indicated, on October 23rd and 24th. Proud of how we've come together in a difficult time, but incredibly proud that we've been driven by the medical experts. We said we were going to, and that's where we find ourselves today. So let me turn it over for Coach Fitz to say a few comments as well, and then we can take some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody, for being here today. Greatly appreciate you jumping in on short notice and you taking the time. Exciting day. I'm excited to be back on the field with our guys, preparing for a game. Obviously, the health and safety of our student athletes has been the number one priority. And really want to thank Jim and Morty, obviously both in leadership roles in the conference, for their hard work and dedication. The subcommittees, Dr. Borchers from Ohio State and everybody on that committee that really worked hand in hand with the conference and Commissioner Warren, and then everybody here locally. And it starts with Jeff Mjaanes. And I want to thank Doc for he and Kevin Kikagawa and our medical staff for their relentless approach to the way that we've done things and how we've gone about our protocols here. And from my perspective, the health and safety has been the number one priority. It will continue to be that way with what we do and how we do things here at Northwestern. And I feel that we're in the best hands that we possibly can be with Doc, his staff, and Kevin and his staff. We got a little bit of a heads up that the news was coming this morning. I was in our weight room, kind of as one group was transitioning out, another one was transitioning in, and the guys were absolutely ecstatic. They were fired up for the news, and then we got on a quick Zoom after the second lift wrapped up and just gave them a little tweak in our schedule here for the next 2 days as we anticipate getting more information from the Big Ten Conference on what we can do and how we can do things as we move forward, getting ready to get back to play. But the driving force obviously will be the health and safety of our guys, but especially for our seniors. I'm ecstatic that after we got postponed 40 couple days ago, to have them with the opportunity, if they so choose, to play is a group that I'm really ecstatic for. So again, thanks everybody for being here. I look forward to getting our team prepared to the best of our ability here as we move forward into October with the opportunity to play. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Thank you, Coach Fitz. We had a couple of people that joined us a little bit late. As a reminder, if you would like to ask a question of Dr. Phillips, Coach Fitzgerald, or Dr. Jeff Mjaanes, our head team physician, please send me a private chat here in the Zoom. Our first question today, and please direct your question to who you would like to address it, goes to Teddy Greenstein from the Chicago Tribune.
Hello, good to see you all. Fitz, if I could start with you and then ask Jim. Any other color or any other kind of good moments from this morning, talking to your guys, any interesting reactions, high fives, or are you guys just kind of doing elbow bumps?
Yeah, well, you got to social distance, and then you got to be able to do like this and, this thing. So, yeah, no, the guys were stoked, Teddy. I mean, the guys have wanted to play. They also, I think, have asked the right questions. Their families have asked the right questions, and it was imperative that those answers were put in place. And I'll let Jim speak to, how the COPC and the conference worked with the subcommittees. But from my perspective, this has just been a process of, once we got shut down, giving our guys a chance to kind of take a step back, exhale, kind of just reevaluate a lot of things, and then slowly start to bring them back. So we're kind of we had a schedule through Friday. We're going to adjust that now for tomorrow and Friday, do a little bit more installation and a little bit more on the field, take a couple days off to kind of recover, and then get really back into it next week with kind of a 6-day-a-week preparation leading into game week. So that's our schedule. But, from that standpoint, the guys are stoked. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. No water dumped on any guys or anything like that. Guys just excited.
Is Rashawn the only one who you don't think will be with the team, or maybe guys who have health concerns going to opt out?
Yeah, I haven't had direct conversations with a lot of guys at this point, Teddy. But now that we know that we're playing, obviously I'm assuming not only at Northwestern, but I would assume across the Big Ten, there'll be those types of conversations. Not only I would assume it's going to happen with the player and their parents first. And then, typically as the head coach, sometimes you're the last guy to know. So at this point, we'll see how those things go. And at a certain point, through our protocols here, with however it's decided, if there's anybody else that opts out, we'll make those announcements.
Thank you.
And
Two for Jim. Awesome. Two for Jim, if I may, because I don't think they were addressed on the larger Zoom earlier. The first one is, what would prompt a game to be canceled or suspended? Do you guys have any sense of, what the rosters would have to look like? And is it the commissioner's office who makes that decision, or a team would just say we can't play?
Our medical task force will be involved in that. And I'd ask Dr. Mjaanes to potentially speak about that, Teddy. But the conference will be heavily involved, and it'll be each campus has a captain that's in charge from a medical standpoint. So let me ask Jeff to speak to that.
Sure, thanks. I would say that the answer probably lies within the public health department, given the fact that this is a public health crisis. The public health department helps us determine that. There's really no set number of cases or anything like that, although in the Big Ten agreement, we do talk about a test positivity rate of 5% and a population positivity rate of 7.5% as being a limit where we would probably want to shut things down for a brief period and then kind of reassess. But as far as a game being canceled, it would really kind of depend on multiple factors, including number of positive cases on the team, number of positive cases within a population, number of positive cases on campus and in the local community.
All right, thank you. And Jim, if you don't mind dealing with this minefield, do y'all think you would have gotten to this point with the Big Ten returning, regardless of President Trump's activity or involvement?
Well, yeah, you'd have to talk to Commissioner Warren on that specific kind of conversation. But I'd also ask Jeff to speak again. The medical advances with the antigen daily test have really come about here over the course of the last 7 to 10 days. And so that's a big component and really a part of the framework for this return to competition. So, I'd ask maybe Jeff to just speak about the opportunity to partner with multiple organizations to acquire those tests.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Yeah, for us, I think the game changer was really the fact that there have been significant advancements in testing, primarily this antigen testing. Antigen testing detects certain proteins in the virus, and it can actually detect a level of virus that is thought to be below the level of infectivity. So basically, you're catching somebody with a positive before they're even contagious. That's a huge breakthrough in this. If we can do that on a daily basis, which is what's in our proposal, then we can identify people before they're even infectious, and we can remove them and really maintain the sanctity and the health of the team. So that was primarily the biggest game changer, is the fact that these antigen tests are out there, labs are developing them, and they're receiving emergency use authorizations for release. The second thing I think was the cardiac implications of the virus and the concerns for myocarditis. We have a couple Big Ten institutions who had some real challenges in trying to get cardiac MRI, which is one of the mainstays of the evaluation in order to truly rule out the possibility of myocarditis in an athlete. And so now with the fact that we've been able to secure some workarounds where every institution could have access to cardiac MRI, that was the other game changer. So at the very beginning, the reason to postpone was based on health and safety. And in the end, the reason to resume is again based on health and safety. It's really focused on the testing and the cardiac evaluation.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. Adam?
Hey guys, thanks for the time. I had one for Dr. Mjaanes and one for Jim. For Dr. Mjaanes, I know you run the subcommittee that spoke to the presidents, the small group, and then the whole group. I'm just wondering if you could describe what those meetings were like, what their primary concerns were, and what your main points you and your colleagues are trying to get across that had maybe changed from mid-August when the league postponed.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So I was on the task force that Dr. Phillips mentioned with Sandy Barber and Dr. Jim Borchers from OSU being the co-chairs of that. I'll be honest with you, the discussions were great. They were long. We had some really long meetings, but they were never contentious. Everybody really came in with the exact same approach, which was how do we make this work? How do we create the safest path forward for football? I think we all felt that it was possible, but we needed some key things in place, some key elements in place in order to do that. And one of those was the testing, as I mentioned. The other was the cardiac MRI. The last piece is really the contact tracing piece, which is something that still needs to be figured out to some degree. But we think that with daily antigen testing, if you're able to identify somebody before they're actually contagious and we can remove them, it almost completely eliminates the need for contact tracing. And so it actually helps solve that problem secondarily. We still need to have these conversations with our public health departments in each individual state and make sure that everybody is on board. But those were the big game changers for us. The conversations were great. Everyone was on the same page in terms of how we go about this. And in the end, it was completely unanimous that we should proceed with this and that this was indeed the safest path forward.
And then for Jim, I know Commissioner Warren referenced lessons over the past 40 days. I'm just curious from your position, you've been in this league a long time. It hasn't been a particularly nice period for this league in terms of the divisiveness and some of the things that have been said. I'm just curious what you think the takeaways are from this last month or so that can be applied going forward to, I don't know if it's healing or whatever the word you want to use to move forward as a league.
I think, Adam, the collaboration, the commitment to each other, the commitment to the student athletes, the ability for us to come together over the last, 40 days or so. It was 36 days since the announcement of the postponement, and really rally behind the one common goal, and that is to continue forward with what the student athletes have wanted from the beginning, which was an opportunity to play, but do it in a safe way. So, those are just some takeaways that I feel that all of us across, not only the athletic director level, but I know our coaches were outspoken, and those things, I think, teach us all a lesson. And the hope is that we'll be better for all that we've gone through. But we did it together, and we've got to this point together.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Peter Warren of the Daily Northwestern. Peter?
Hi, thank you. I just have a few for Jim. What would you say to non-student athletes who are hearing about the decision and those who do not have access to the same level of testing as the student athletes will get?
It's a great question, Peter. It really is. And that was a decision that was made, and not with a lot of dialogue, and not with an awful lot of reflection on what that would mean. In the end, this is something that the Big Ten is administering, and obviously we're one of the institutions in the Big Ten, and so it's a fair question, and I don't know if I have an answer other than that.
why do you think sort of obviously the Big Ten is in this range, but why do the football players and student athletes and theoretically deserve it over other members of the community?
Yeah, another really good question. This was a conference-wide decision, and as a member of the conference, you just try to make the best decision that you can for your institution. And we had our president obviously was involved, and our trustees, and there were a lot of people that made this decision. And so I would just say it wasn't done hastily. It was done with a lot of careful consideration, but it's a really fair question.
And then the statement from the Big Ten said updates on other fall sports and winter sports will come shortly. Is there a timeline for that?
I would say, within a period of, I would hope a few days, if not into next week. We have to get our arms around what we're going to do with the fall sports. But that decision, as you mentioned, from the Big Ten is forthcoming.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Josh Friedman from WGN. Josh?
Knowing if you guys would get the chance to play this fall.
Josh, I don't know if everybody heard your full question. I think I missed the first part. If you could repeat it.
No problem. For Fitz, just what was it like watching the past couple of weeks, if you did watch it all, the college football landscape, not knowing if you would get back on the field this fall?
Well, I watched a little bit of youth flag football first. So I've watched that more than I've watched anything else. And that was awesome as a dad to watch, and a lot of fun. Same thing with watching youth baseball for my son Brendan all summer long. So that's been a joy and a treat for me that maybe in another year that selfishly I wouldn't have been able to experience. So there's always somewhat of a positive through tough times, and that was a positive for myself and our family. And then to watch ball has been awesome. I mean, I'm a football fan before I'm a coach, so it was great. I was so fired up to see the alley fade thrown by Mitch for the touchdown in Detroit on Sunday, and then that great defensive stand down the stretch for the Bears. So I got a chance to watch some more ball than I usually get to watch, and learn some valuable lessons watching some of those games, and then being able to research a little bit, talking to some of my colleagues throughout the country on how they prepared their teams, maybe some of their best practices, and then some of the issues that the teams have had in game. You've probably seen it a little bit, but the electronic whistle right now is problematic. We're actually going to get a few for practice. There's a delay in it being executed, and then the noise kind of goes in the direction of the whistle. And so there's been some late hit penalties, things of that nature of what I've learned. But it's just great to get back going to coach the guys that love the game and want to play the game in a health and safe manner.
Just as a follow-up, Fitz, we've heard a lot about the mental health of student athletes recently. Over the past month since the decision came out, how would you characterize how your players have dealt with things? And now that they know there is a season starting next month, how big of a boost is that to their mental health and how they've reacted?
Yeah, Josh, it's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster for our student athletes, for their families, all of our healthcare providers, not only for our student athletes, but, I think about everyone here in the Chicagoland area and in the country. For us specifically at Northwestern and our hospitals, we've all been impacted by this pandemic, and it's real, and it's something that we take very seriously. And, it's something that from the get-go, Doc Mjaanes has been, just awesome from a standpoint of executing to the best of our ability. And our guys have been terrific, making great social decisions. And my hope is that they continue to do that and be leaders here on our campus. It's going to be challenging. We know that, but we'll be able to do that. From a mental health standpoint, we've been able to allocate our resources that we have here at Northwestern and within the athletic department. We've tried to stay in constant communication with our guys as a coaching staff. And the challenge really is for those that are in isolation and quarantine. It's really a hard experience for them. And so we've got kind of an all hands on deck mentality of making sure sports psych, our athletic trainers, our coaches, our support staff, our administration, our families are all in touch with those guys, because that's definitely something challenging from a mental health standpoint. And then the last part of your question about what is a day like today. I mean, the guys were fired up. I can't stress that enough. They were really excited to hear the news. They loved the game. They love to play the game. And now we just got to go, execute the plan accordingly.
Our next question is from Mike Berman with NBC. Mike, go ahead.
Okay. Hey, Fitz, how you doing?
Hey, Mike, what's up, buddy?
You know, the normal timeline is something you're familiar with in terms of going through spring ball and then coming back for fall camp and then getting into the season. I'm just curious, what do you think the challenges will be for you as a football coach and your football team in terms of, I guess it's about 5 or 6 weeks that you'll have now to the start. What do you think the biggest challenge will be in getting prepared so that you're in the best possible position to play well and win on that first week?
That's a great question, Mike. And Doc and I have this kind of crawl, walk, run, sprint mentality that we've been going about, through this process. And so, the way we onboarded our guys, the way we re-onboarded them, the way we work with our sports science standpoint from try to avoid every soft tissue issue that we can through our structure and through the way that we work, not only in the weight room, our running, but then our practices. And so you start from the game and you work your way back, right? And so as we look at next week, it'll be a ramp up, right? And then at a certain point, we'll probably hit, like everybody does in a team sport, when you really don't have a game to break everything up, you're going to hit a little mental wall, a little physical fatigue. We'll adjust and react to that accordingly. And then usually there's just a great shot of adrenaline when you get into game week, right? You know what you've got coming on Saturday. So we don't know who we're playing yet. I don't even know if we're playing Friday or Saturday, but we'll put that plan together. But we will crawl, walk, run, then sprint. That'll be kind of how we onboard the guys. And that was the biggest lesson I learned watching this weekend. We're seeing the soft tissue issues that happened. And so we've just got to really do everything we can from our structure to try to avoid that to the best of our ability while bringing our guys along. Mentally, we probably got through about 10 or 11 installs prior to getting shut down. We'll start back over at that tomorrow morning. And by the early October, we'll have everything installed. Then hopefully all the contact tracing, all those things will be answered, and we'll be able to get our guys from a blocking, block destruction, tackling, fundamental and technique prepared to play our game in a healthy and safe manner.
And so just one point of clarification, you were talking about next week getting on the field. I just wanted to try and get some clarification. When will you guys actually have an opportunity to be on the field and practice for the first time? Or is that
tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Air in our helmets, neck rolls not on, but we'll be on soon enough.
Our next question comes from Matt Albert from Inside Northwestern. Matt?
Thank you. My first question is towards Coach Fitzgerald and Dr. Phillips, and it's you were talking about how sort of players' mental health has changed and been sort of a roller coaster over the past 36 days. How much contact have you had with the families of the players, and how have you tried to use that connection and sort of with the fluid situation as it is? How have you been updating them?
Yeah, I'll start with that. Thanks, Matt, for your question. Hope all is well. It's been frequent. What we've tried to do is at every kind of milestone, when we kind of got back going and when the guys came this summer, then when we ramped up workouts, Doc Mjaanes and Dr. Phillips have led Zoom calls with our players and our families. I would say probably from, I'm trying to think, maybe late May, early June. It seemed like almost every couple of weeks we were on something. We haven't put it in the books yet for this weekend, but there'll be something. Jeff's probably smiling. We'll be doing something probably Friday, Saturday, Sunday with the families. We've already alerted our parent, our primary parent contact to alert the families and kind of what the next steps are. We hope to get over the next 72 hours a lot of questions answered by the Big Ten, so we can kind of come into those meetings. That's what we've tried to do, anticipating, quite frankly, I'm a dad of a sophomore high school football player, right? So I try to sit there and ask myself all the questions I would ask the primary care provider at Loyola Academy and the trainers and the coaches to be able to anticipate what the families will ask us, myself primarily, Dr. Phillips and Doc Mjaanes, about what we're doing, how we're doing it, what the protocols are, and things of that nature. So that's been the plan. I think we've done as good of a job as we can. And then there's been a lot of one-off conversations with parents individually, with players individually, not only myself, but Doc and Kevin Kikagawa and our athletic training staff, making sure we get every and all questions answered in as timely of a manner that we can. And then having the humility not to be able to answer questions. I mean, there's been a lot of those. There's been a lot where we've just said, we don't know that answer. We're going to keep it on the list. And once we get that answer, we're going to give it to you. So there's been probably more of that than we are used to having to give, but we've made sure we've been as forthright, transparent, and honest as we can.
Thank you. And I have another, oh, sorry, Dr. Phillips, were you going to go?
No, I think Coach
Okay.
Fitzgerald answered it well.
All right, thank you. And I just have a quick one for Dr. Mjaanes. Where do you plan to do the post-COVID heart screenings or the cardiac MRIs?
Yeah, so the cardiac, so we've worked really well with our cardiologists here at Northwestern Medicine since the get-go. And we've been already doing EKGs, echocardiograms, and cardiac enzymes on our student athletes. We have been doing some cardiac MRIs already as well. And so the plan is to continue to do those through Northwestern Medicine. We have a cardiac MRI up here in Lake Forest, and then we have several downtown. So we'll be working between all the locations, but we'll get it done close to home.
Our next question is from Matt Fortuna with The Athletic. Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, this is muted. Thanks for doing this. My question is for Jim. On August 19th, Kevin Warren put out a pretty definitive open letter to the Big Ten community saying this decision will not be revisited. How do you guys internally pivot from that, so to speak? At what point is it, well, can we still do this? We've got new medical advancements and so forth. Can you take us a little bit behind the scenes of how you guys revisit and ultimately do a 180 on a decision that we got pretty definitive statements on twice a month ago?
Matt, the decision from the very beginning was that it was going to be a postponement. It wasn't a cancellation of the season. And so that meant that we as a conference and individual schools had work to do to provide a path forward, a safe path forward in order to play. And hence the creation of those 3 subcommittees that worked again we worked daily as committees, and we were almost together daily amongst the 3 committees, and tried to create, again, a successful plan that was safe and was led by Dr. Mjaanes and, as been described, Dr. Borchers and Sandy Barber. And so, that's where you have an awful lot of conversations. For me, it was to talk with the folks at Fox and ESPN, and those groups have been great partners of ours. For Barry, it was to look at the football schedule with our head coaches, and then for he and I to get together. And then finally, that other subcommittee worked diligently, strictly on the medical piece. And one of the critical elements is we had representation across all 14 institutions on that medical committee. So every school was represented, and I think 13 have medical centers attached to the universities. So it just gave us really the knowledge and the resources medically to do some things maybe that haven't been done, and in a way collaborate in a way that maybe hasn't been done in maybe other conferences or across maybe some professional sports organizations. And that tandem type of mentality, that collaborative mentality, led us to just providing options to the COPC. At the end of the day, the Council of Presidents were going to make this decision about whether it was right for us to resume right now or not. And we just tried to provide them options and safe options that they could consider.
Thanks, Jim.
Our next question is from Larry Snyder from ABC. Larry?
I'm good, thank you. Question was answered, thank you.
Okay, in that case, our next question is from William Carmen from Inside NU.
Hey, Coach Fitz. I have one question for you, one for Dr. Mjaanes and one for Dr. Phillips, but I'll start with you, Fitz. I hope all is well. You've said that you thought the team would need 6 weeks of preparation before the season began previously. You have about 5 weeks now before the season starts. You said you guys are planning to practice tomorrow, but before the initial postponement of the season, I think you guys were practicing. How do you think that translates to this period? And I mean, I'd have to think you guys will be in pretty good shape, right?
Yeah, William, hope you're well, buddy. Absolutely. I think I made that statement back before we were allowed back on campus, if I'm not mistaken, maybe back in May or early June. And that was operating under the kind of mindset that we were going to start in August. So I was hoping that we would get some semblance of 6 weeks to be able to work with the guys. And obviously we're going to have more than that now if you look back to what we had before the postponement. And so we really took maybe about a week off-ish between the postponement and kind of starting workouts back. We gave our guys a chance to go home, and some guys came back this week, but they were all working out either here or working out at home with getting plans from our strength staff. So I do think we're in really good shape. If Matt Flannery was on here, who's kind of our sports science director, I think he'd tell you we're very pleased with where our conditioning level is here to start this 5-week segment, but we will take it on a day by day, that just like we always do. I mean, we try to get it almost down to each 6-minute segment of practice to make sure we're doing the right things from a preparedness standpoint. So I feel I'm a little bit, I'm actually surprised, and I'm very happy that we're going to have this large of a window to get prepared to play. I think it'll give us every opportunity to be prepared.
Awesome. And then for Dr. Phillips, you obviously had a very tough decision as this process was going around. I can't imagine it was easy doing that. But in terms of the past, the media has often reported you as a candidate for the Big Ten commissioner role. Obviously, you're at Northwestern, but just thinking, I'm sure you were happy that you didn't have to be in Commissioner Warren's shoes making that decision.
Is there a question? Is there a question there?
Sorry. So, were you happy you weren't in his shoes, I guess?
Listen, we were led by Commissioner Warren, and he's gotten us to this place. And I know everybody's excited about where we're moving forward in a really safe way for our student athletes to do something that they truly love. So we're in a good place.
Great. And then for Dr. Mjaanes, I've seen conflicting reports about where the antigen daily testing is coming from. Where's the Big Ten getting the resources for the testing?
The Big Ten is working with a couple major lab companies in the United States. I'm not sure that the deal is quite finalized yet. The discussions are still ongoing, so I'm not sure that I'm actually at liberty to say. I've not been involved with those discussions, but I have been updated on the status in terms of what they could offer us, and they do offer us enough testing to proceed. The testing would be all done through one of these major labs. It would not take from any local resources. We've actually been able at Northwestern to really expand our testing in a partnership with Northwestern Medicine and Tempest Labs, and so we've actually got a fairly robust system right now for testing our students, our grad students and our undergrad students. I'm happy to say that this testing would not take from that in any way. In fact, one of the tenets, one of the principles of our task force was that there be no negative impact on state, regional, and local resources for fighting COVID-19. So I feel really good about where we landed with that.
This will be our last question. It comes from Scott Docterman with The Athletic. Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I have a question for Fitz and one for Jim. For Fitz, some of the things we saw last weekend, at least some of the teams, were really fundamentals and details, the things that probably stress you out more than anything else, seem to be lacking. Is that something that, whether it's special teams play, just the right fits, the right hands and everything, is that probably the biggest concern now to try to shore up between now and the start of the season?
I got a lot of concerns, Scott. Yeah, there's no question. That's one of them. I need to get our guys, right now, the micro, we got to get back on the field. We got to get our urgency back up, our mindset back, ready to go compete, which I think that will happen pretty efficiently and pretty quickly. The next step then will be getting the fundamentals of blocking, block destruction, angles, tackling, and things of that nature that have to be coached. They have to be created as a mental and physical habit. Our game is not, other games. You have to practice those things from a health and safety standpoint. You have to do it in a smart manner. You have to do it in a very safe manner. But those skills have got to be practiced. And so the timing of that, how we get to that point, and then, once we get through our install, which will be pretty quickly, it'll be accelerated, we will quickly get into situational football in all three phases. And I think that's what jumped out to me, not only with the play on the field, but it also jumped out to me with the coaching. You've got to be high and tight with your critical decision making. You got to get back into the flow of calling games and executing situations. So we'll do a lot of situational stuff in practice. It'll be in a controlled setting, but we've got to get our guys thinking, man, first down is totally different than 3rd and 1, 2-minute situations, tight zone backed up. What happens when a kickoff is pooched? You never back up. We saw that in the Saints-Buccaneers game. I'm watching it with my boys, and my son Jack is a sophomore and goes, "Daddy, you never back up when the ball's over your head." I know, but the pro just did. So, you just got to work through those things. There's a lot of nuances of our game, and I'm just fired up and can't wait to get back out there with the guys. And I'm ecstatic for them and ready to go execute our plan.
Terrific. And for Jim, my question is, last year, as far as inventory goes, I think there were 96 games the Big Ten controlled, 56 of which ended up appearing on not BTN, either FS1, Fox, or the ESPN family of networks. So you do have, it seems like, a similar amount of games, at least available inventory to your non-league rights holders. Do you anticipate to be a similar amount? And what kinds of things did you have to give back to them to assure that there might be a close, financially, you might be able to arrange a similar relationship as you did previously?
So probably two answers there, Paul. One is that we did have a chance to talk with them, as I've mentioned, each and every step of the way. And so we've gone down now to 63 games, 62, and then the Big Ten championship. So I think you'll see a similar distribution. I had a chance to talk to Burke Mjaanes this morning, and I had and multiple calls today with Larry Jones and Mark Silverman of Fox. And so the devil will be in the details about distribution and which games and some of those types of things. And then, the financial piece of it will, I think, still be to be determined based on matchups and windows and some of those things. So we don't have all of that information yet. And this remains a work in progress since we just announced it today. And we had 3 or 4 different models for the presidents to look at, although all of the options were kind of a cascading approach. We could start in October, we could start in November, December. I think things that you've reported about and others have. So we're nearing some clarity on some of those areas, the financial piece of it, exact games, and where the inventory will be placed, but to be determined. But again, I can't explain and express how good of a partner that we have with Fox and ESPN, and that's a key for us to move forward.
And along those lines, you did have, before, I think your principles were that the teams had to agree after the first weekend of November to move a game into prime time. There were only, I think, 2 Friday night games that were Big Ten games that were on Friday night. Have any of those changed to where you might play on Friday throughout November for added exposure, or potentially more primetime games deeper into the season?
What we've talked about is being flexible, being fair, and really fair from the standpoint of health and safety. And what does that look like in between games? And if we were to play on a short week, what does that mean? And if we are going to do that, again, as we try to put this together, that it's distributed equally across the 14 institutions, and no one school, was put into a more difficult spot than another based on, again, the rhythm of the season, if that makes sense.